I was able to pull off things that I had zero experience in. If you commit yourself and you really care about something, then you can do it.
Today I speak with Jaime Schmidt. She's the co-founder of Schmidt's Naturals.
Personal care products company I started in my kitchen and grew to an acquisition by Unilever.
She started an inclusive investment firm, Colour. She also started a media company, Supermaker.
My advice to entrepreneurs is to say yes now, then figure out how. As long as you let your values lead and your passion, then you're on the right track.
And we were considering potential investors. Got the ear of Unilever specifically during the negotiations for the acquisition. You know, the attorneys were going at it all night. And I came out of the bathroom right after I was like, oh, the deal's done. And one of the guys from the Unilever side threw his cell phone across the room. And I walked into that. My heart fell.
Jaime, welcome to the studio today.
Thanks, Vinny.
It's great to have you.
Yeah, I'm really excited to be here.
Likewise. You've got such a colorful background, excuse the pun. Your company is Color Capital. But, I just wanted to dive in very quickly into where you're from. How'd you wind up in, you live in San Diego now. So how'd you wind up here? And, we can dive into the details afterwards.
Cool. Yeah, it's been a journey. Grew up in Michigan. I was born in 1977 and never really expected to be out here in Southern California, but there's a lot that got me here. Went to school at Michigan State, got my degree in business. I kind of just chose it because I didn't know what else to do. My parents were paying for the tuition, so I figured I would do them good. When I graduated, I still was kind of clueless. Ended up getting a job in human resources, working my way up the corporate ladder, and then this was in Chicago, realizing that I had, a lot in terms of compensation, benefits, connections in the job I was working, but just didn't quite love what I was doing and felt that there was some place new for me, not just in terms of my career, but also physically. So I started looking around, traveling a bit, figuring out where I wanted to live, what I wanted to do, and ended up in Portland, Oregon. Mm-hmm. It's the most creative city in the country, in my opinion. A lot of artists, creatives, and I figured I could find a place there and maybe potentially make a name for myself, whatever that might look like. I'll pause there. There's a lot that went into that.
Yeah, that's great. So you gave up the golden handcuffs, right?
I did.
In the corporate world.
Yeah. I was, I was in a position in my early 20s where I had a great salary. My 401k was like 14%. I was making it happen. And then I just thought life's too short. I don't know if I can stick with this forever. And so.
That's great. Yeah. That's the itch entrepreneurs get, right?
Yeah, totally.
And so you made your way to Oregon. We can go into the details. You started a company there. You sold it. And then you set up a venture capital business, and then you moved to San Diego, and you're very happy here right now.
Yeah, loving it. This is the life.
Well, did you see that San Diego actually was ranked as the most expensive city in America now?
I've seen it, but I think the investment is worth what we get in terms of weather.
I agree. The taxes and
and just with the weather itself, how it elevates our lifestyle and our health and our opportunities to,
It's very outdoorsy as well. There's a lot of places to go here and enjoy. So it's great having you in town and having you join us. Okay, so let's dive into the details here.
Yeah.
So here you are. You're in this like cushy job. Everything's great, and you get that itch which a lot of people get to start something new and something that you own. How did you make the transition? Did you save up money before you did that? How did you make that jump from being a corporate slave / employee into someone who starts their own business?
Yeah, great question. I realized I didn't need a lot of money at the time in my life. My needs were minimal. I just, enjoyed hanging out with friends, shopping at thrift stores. Capital wasn't much of a concern in those days. I still had no kids. Yeah. And so made the journey cross country to Portland, Oregon. Again, I saw it as the land of opportunity for, somebody who was young.
What made you decide Portland? What is the?
I had visited a few times. Loved the hiking, the camping, and all of that. I was a bit of a hippie, kind of a DIY person, so I felt like I fit, right in culturally. It was the place where 20-somethings go to retire, is what I had heard. It's it's changed a bit since, but at the time it totally made sense, and it worked for me. When I moved there, I ended up still getting more of a corporate job. It was at Portland Public Schools. Just to get my sort of footing. But once I started doing that, I made a promise to myself that within 1 year, I was going to figure out what it was I was meant to do and pursue that, whatever that might be. So I quit the Portland Public Schools job after the year, and then ended up getting my hands dirty with everything. I took some classes in interior design. I was making all sorts of things in my home. I was making kombuchas and hot sauces and all these personal care products, and ended up getting pregnant, unexpectedly. And with that, I was paying a lot closer attention to the products I was using in my skin and decided that I wanted to make more and more healthy, natural products for myself. And then suddenly it clicked that this was an opportunity to potentially create a business, right, and benefit myself at the same time. But a lot went into, getting to that realization.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you went and explored some of your creative side. You're a maker at the end of the day. You like making things and creating things. And so you were trying to solve a need that you really had. You had this need for cleaner products, which, quite frankly, we still need more of today. There's still a huge market. I mean, everything from makeup to toothpaste to cleaning materials. This stuff's horrible. The amount of chemicals in there, and these are endocrine disruptors as well, which affect hormones and between whether it's kids or adults.
Right.
It's pretty bad for you. And so, I think you're one of the pioneers of the natural movement around personal care products.
Thanks.
And
I like to think so.
You are, and for background, maybe we can talk about how you actually how did you learn what you needed to learn to make these clean products?
Sure. Yeah. I'm not a chemist. I'm not a scientist. I was somebody that was just curious and health conscious and on a budget too, to be frank. And this was back in 2010, and so natural products were still not mainstream.
Very nascent.
Yeah, they were few and far between. People were very skeptical.
I remember Tom's was the other one.
Brand.
Yeah, it was the brand.
Yeah, and it didn't work for a lot of people, myself included. And so once I started making them and realizing they were working well for me, I recognized there was a big opportunity in the market for more. I started selling at the farmers markets in Portland, and the reception was really huge. People in Portland wanted clean, healthy things. I wanted to support local makers. And the biggest part of it is that the products were really working for them, and so they kept coming back. I had retailers coming to my booths at the farmers market saying, where can I carry this in my stores? And so that's when it really clicked.
So this was Schmidt's Naturals, right?
Yeah. So I started. It was I had a lot of products at the time. I had sunscreens, deodorants, shampoos, lotions, all sorts of things, and I realized the opportunity was really in the deodorant category. Okay. That's where, we had only 1-2 brands that, were proclaimed as natural. They didn't necessarily work too well for many people. And I just saw an opportunity to create, a different formula with different fragrances and really interesting packaging and branding that didn't yet exist.
Okay, that's fantastic. Yeah. So you're at the farmers market, you're getting interest. How do you go from that to building what is now a multi-billion-dollar business? I really want to dive into the details here.
It's wild. It's not something I set out to do. I never looked too far ahead. I was always just focused on what was right in front of me, keeping my customers happy, bringing on the next retailer. And,
those are important things, right? These are the basics, like blocking and tackling.
Yeah, and that's what I think that worked to my advantage is that I didn't go out to become a millionaire, right? I wasn't I'm going to create this huge brand.
You're passionate about what you were doing.
I actually truly enjoyed it. And while I was going through a career change and trying to find myself, I still actually enjoyed what I was doing. It wasn't a desperate attempt to do something, which was, everything.
I mean, there's a lesson there for people. I think when you follow your passions and you go and create products that you need for yourself. Yeah. You first of all, it's great because you're the customer as well, so you know what you're looking for.
Yes.
And you can really fine tune it and build the right product. And then as you test it with other people, you can get feedback from the market and learn from them as well.
Yeah.
But it's a passion project. It's something you're trying to do for yourself.
Right.
And those are often the most successful businesses.
Yeah, I agree with you fully. And I think it's important to understand that there's a lot of talk around finding your passion, and I agree with that, and that's what happened to me. But you also, it doesn't just fall into your lap.
You experimented. How many different,
you have to put in the work to find it. And you have
Yeah.
to be willing to fail and willing to try things you're not comfortable with, and be willing to put yourself in a situation that you've never been in, and just learn things. And so as much as, finding your passion is this beautiful sort of organic thing, it's still, there's a lot of work and commitment that goes into making it happen.
How long does it take for you to get from your first couple of batches of product to actually going, making a profit or actually getting to the point where you think this is going to work? Because I'm guessing you're spending a lot of cash.
Yeah. I mean, I was very broke,
Okay.
as we discussed. And my husband at the time was a social worker. And so we were literally living off of like, $30,000 a year,
Yeah.
and we had a new baby. And so there wasn't a lot of money to waste in the R&D process. But it was tough, like so the earliest product was a deodorant packaged in a jar, which is very unconventional. But it was an interesting way to like, get people's attention. No one had seen something like that before. So if nothing else, they like stopped at the booth and said, "What the hell is this? Like, why do I care about this?" And then as we matured and as became a little more mainstream, I realized deodorant in a jar wasn't going to go very far, and so I had to do the traditional stick. But lots of formulations. And again, I wasn't a scientist, I wasn't a chemist, and so I didn't, walk into this like knowing how certain, chemicals are going to react with one another. It was a lot of trial and error.
How'd you teach yourself this stuff? YouTube? What did you do?
I mean, I read about like different ingredients and how they function, and so really the formula was pretty simple, right? It was baking soda, arrowroot powder, there was cocoa butter, shea butter, I had some oils and waxes and things, but it was the trick was just getting the right ratios and melting them at the right temperatures. So literally just so much trial and error in a very small apartment kitchen.
Yeah.
And getting the house dirty and like committing our kitchen to being a lab.
That's pretty amazing though.
Yeah, it is amazing. Yeah, thanks.
Like Walter White vibes.
Yeah. No, it was insane, and like it was so frustrating, but I knew that like if I kept going, like the formula was there.
Yeah.
But then sometimes I would ask myself like who do I think I am competing against?
The big companies.
Yeah, like with
exactly.
like the most sophisticated R&D and all the capital in the world. But I was in my little kitchen like I know I can figure it out.
You did it.
So I did it. Yeah.
Okay. So how did you get your first big break with a company?
Yeah. I had a TV appearance. I was on Fox News, and it was the Carol Alt show. I don't think it exists anymore, but she was a former model. I don't know if you know. They called me up randomly and said, "We want to interview you about your deodorant." And I'd never been on TV. I was freaked out. I'd never been to New York. So I flew out there, did the interview, totally nervous. I felt like I totally just like tanked it and like did terrible. But I got phone calls immediately when the episode aired, and people were very intrigued, and I sold a lot that way. And I got a lot of interest from retailers. And
how did you finance the production? Was it too expensive, or was it the margins pretty good?
Say it again.
How did you finance the production?
Oh, the production of the product.
Yeah.
Recycling the money back in.
Okay.
So I had a tiny amount of savings I had accumulated through my work in corporate. It didn't last long, and again, the family had a very meager income, and so a lot of it was just recycling the cash back in. So. The margins on a personal care product are pretty high, but there was a lot of waste, happening that I had to account for. But if I sold something, that money went right back into creating the next batch.
Okay, so so how many years into the business were you at this point?
That was about 2 or 3 years in. I had been working by myself.
So you're grinding away for
one
2 or 3
woman
years
show.
with
Yeah,
meager earnings and
yeah, it was insane. But I didn't like fully embrace it as a full-time job at the time. I still had a couple of side projects. I was working. My goal at the time was to fund the business with a slight amount of capital that might be from jobs relevant to what I was doing. So, for example, I worked for a local store that was selling locally made products. And so, it was a great opportunity for me to see how my product would sell in stores and how customers interacted with it. And so I had a couple little side hustles, but they were all relevant to the business and helpful in some way.
that's great.
Yeah.
I mean, for women at home watching you, I'm sure you're somewhat of a hero here because you have a kid, you're grinding away for years on a dream and a passion project. And, as you said, your husband wasn't making a lot of money. So you guys were kind of, just getting by and trying to build a business, and you turn that into a huge success.
Yeah.
So like, let's talk about the fortitude and the emotional strain that you were under in that period, because it can't be easy, right?
It was hard, but it was also really exciting because I was seeing success that I hadn't accounted for or hadn't fully like envisioned for myself, because when I started the company, I never had plans to get acquired, for one. That was never in my thinking. I would never imagine seeing the day where my products were sold in Target, Costco, Walmart. So every step just led to the next. And so I just kept my head down, didn't look too far ahead, and just said yes to things, right? And like I didn't always know what I was doing. I literally built out a factory. We didn't have a co-packer, we were making it. So it started in my kitchen and then expanded to a local facility that was like 500 square feet, and then just kept building a bigger factory. And so there's so much that goes along with that in terms of like what can go wrong, operational setbacks and things that, you know, as an entrepreneur in general, like you're faced with so many challenges, but then when you have your own factory, there's like so much more they have to learn. It's wild. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Well, so it sounds to me like you really embellished the experience in a big way.
Yeah.
Which is great. Like I look back on my experiences, and as much as they were tough,
Yeah.
you know, maybe the person I am today, because it's one of those you just have to go through.
Right.
And it's hard to explain to someone. And a lot of people looking from the outside in go, "Oh, that must have been painful." Yes, it is. That's why I tell people, if you're trying to be an entrepreneur for the wrong reasons, you're going to fail, because unless you've got the passion driving you, and you really want to solve a problem or build something special, you're going to quit the first sight of pain if it's just about the money.
And I think even if you like think about it too much and contemplate like what it means to be an entrepreneur, it's like totally overwhelming and scary. So you like, you just got to stay in your zone.
Yeah.
And like if you're having fun and you're, you know, getting by and like, you know, changing people's lives for the better, like just keep going.
So how many employees did you have at peak?
The most we had was around 150, and that we had 2 shifts across manufacturing. So a lot of those employees were manufacturing employees, and that brings up a other set of challenges, right? Like managing those types of shifts. You know, we had people working early, people working late. There's a lot of turnover, you know, in factory jobs, and but then we also were building up a pretty solid marketing team. Sales was very lean, but you know, we had what we needed to get by, and never had a C-suite. You know, it was literally, you know, like me acting as CEO.
That was it.
And when, you know, the business got bigger, we were definitely at a point where we're like, okay, we either need to hire a C-suite and really like go all in, or consider opportunities like, you know, the acquisition offer that we had.
Well, let's get into that in a second. So, what was the size of the business when you got an acquisition and offer, and how did that come about?
Mm-hmm. We were around 30 million in revenue.
Okay, great.
And we had gotten interest from Unilever and also P&G and L'Oreal. We've had their hat in the ring. And it really came about through, we had Goldman Sachs as a broker. We had been exploring different opportunities for maybe bringing on some VC money. So up to this point, it was bootstrapped.
Yeah.
You know, if that wasn't clear.
That's amazing. So at that point, were you the only shareholder in the business, or did you have other shareholders?
I ended up bringing in a partner about 4 years in. So we, you know, had grown the business together. But we had not taken on any outside capital. We had a couple lines of credit. And then when we were about 7 years in, that's when our wholesale really took off. So it was Costco, Walmart, Target, all within months of each other. And so all our money was tied up on store shelves and inventory. So we were looking at the potential for some investors. We were getting a lot of outside interest. I honestly wasn't interested in going through the whole fundraising process. I just didn't want to deal with it. It was a distraction. But I realized, you know, we needed something. And so then we started seeing these offers from you know, big CPG like Unilever, and began to take it seriously and realize what it could do for the business.
Okay. In the journey to this point, because obviously selling to these stores and you know, the lines of credit you have to take on, because you have to finance their inventory to a large extent. They don't really pay you up front. When you look at how people without capital, you know, they're just coming in cold, they don't have sort of family wealth or anything like that.
Right.
When they're starting these businesses, do you see, who's there to help them? Who's there to help you? I mean, was it an advantage being a female, or was it a disadvantage? Do people treat you differently? Did you feel anything around that?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot there that you just asked. I think, you know, I had a family that was supportive and I knew was there if I needed them, but I never wanted to go there. I never wanted to lean on my parents, you know, like
do it by yourself,
for money. But you know, it does help. Like we have to admit, like the privilege that we have as like somebody who comes from a family, not a family of, you know, luxurious means by any, you know, any account, but you know, enough to get us by. And so I knew that, you know, worst came to worst, if I was like starving, they would buy me a meal. So that helped. But you know, being a woman, certainly, different challenges. You know, it's harder to be taken seriously, you know, in a lot of ways. And
let's talk about that. I mean, you are running a really successful business. You got $30 million in sales. You built this up from the ground up, and you think people don't take you seriously?
Well, I remember one time walking into a store, and I was in Michigan visiting my parents, and I saw it as an opportunity to get new retail accounts, right? So I would like go around and borrow my parents' car, loaded it up with deodorant, and I would stop in stores. And I remember this guy very specifically saying, like, so you just drive around and like sling this stuff out of your back seat? And I was like, it just bothered me so much that he didn't see me as like a serious entrepreneur,
Yeah.
but it was like motivation to like prove to him, well, like, all right, buddy, like turn it down. In 2 years, you're gonna be begging to carry my product, right? And they did. Like, we didn't get that wholesale account at that time, but then like a couple years later, we were on their shelves, and so it takes, you have to prove yourself. Like, I think you have to work a little bit harder to like to prove yourself. And I never was one to like lean on like the the fact that I was a woman is so much harder, and like seeing that as like as a sob story or whatever, but it's true, like when I look back now, I'm like, okay, there were times when like most significantly, I remember during the negotiations for the acquisition, there were a lot of people in the room. There was lawyers, there were, accountants, there were people from both sides, negotiating these things. And I remember people asking me a lot, like, how are you feeling? Like, what's like, how's your mood? How are your emotions? And then my male business partner at the time was getting, the questions around the finances and just like the, like checking things off the list.
insulting,
And so,
actually.
and I was just like, I could speak to that, like, probably better than he can.
Yeah.
And so I remember that, just being a little
What advice would you give to women in this situation?
acknowledge, like, recognize like that it will be harder, and don't shy away from it. Hold your ground, call people out, and surround yourself with people that make you feel good. And if there is a situation that doesn't feel right, you just screw it, you move on to the next, right? Like we don't need every partner, we don't need every wholesale account. If it's, something that just puts us in an uncomfortable situation that we're not 100% feeling good about.
Yeah, a lot about business is just navigating through these energies.
Yeah.
So if you've come I don't do business with people who I think have got bad energy. Well, I think they just...
It's hard though. If you're like a new entrepreneur working for a startup, it's hard to turn your head to opportunities into people,
Sure,
right? Because you're like, everybody offers something, like, but I 100%, now that I'm further along in my success, like, it's easy for me to be like, I want nothing to do with you.
Exactly.
Or like the energy doesn't feel right. So I think it is important, as a young early stage entrepreneur to be able to hone that skill to, if it doesn't feel right, like intuition is everything. And I talk a lot about that too, is like people, ask how I build a business without any experience. I'm like, well, I leaned really heavily on my intuition. And so I think, that you're always refining that and honing in on that and trying to understand, what that means.
In your industry, was there a lot of like wining and dining, taking people out, that? Was it a lot of relationship building, or was it just more?
Yeah, later, like when you get to the stages of acquisition, but more in the earlier years of the business, it was just kind of schmoozing with other makers and entrepreneurs. And the thing that made me the happiest was always just hanging out with other startup founders. And, in Portland, they were everywhere. And so we could, meet up for dinner or a drink and talk about, the challenges. And
I like the social setting of dinners and drinks, and for different reasons. Actually, I think you can often tell someone's true colors after they've had a couple of drinks.
Oh yeah,
that's always it's very interesting how people, you're like, well, okay, that's how that person behaves.
That reminds me of something I wrote. I wrote an article or a Twitter thread or something a couple of years ago, I think, about like recognizing those, qualities of a person that's a potential business partner specifically.
Yes, exactly.
How are they treating the wait staff?
That's exactly.
Right?
I was going on to that.
Just
that was
things
my
like you hanging out on a casual basis outside the boardroom. Like you start to pick up on people's
Or even
character.
like, for example, if you pick up dinner the next day, you don't get a message back, or even after dinner, thank you so much for the dinner.
Yeah, you're right.
It's kind of a red flag, right?
Yeah.
It's never about the money.
Right.
It's just about how you get treated and what the sort of reciprocity is. And I always find that even when I'm interviewing people, if I can't do it in person to hire them for a job, you could take them to a restaurant. And I don't know where I heard this trick from, but watch it. It's really watch how they treat the wait staff.
Yeah, we must have read the same book
probably. So I picked it up years ago, and it probably was from a book. But ever since then, I've always liked the social, getting to know someone socially over dinner, over drinks.
Yeah.
In fact, I would say dinner more than drinks.
Yeah.
Drinks is kind of,
well, that's going to alter.
Yeah. But dinner more than drinks. But, even when you have a bit of alcohol in you, people, if it's kind of a business environment and it's a sales environment, people start loosening up a bit more, and you see what the true intentions of the deal are.
Yeah, for sure.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
Not that I advocate taking people out and getting them drunk. I'm just saying, in a social setting,
no, I hear you.
This comes out.
I hear you.
Okay, so how did you get approached by P&G and and Unilever.
Yeah. So at the time, as I mentioned, we were considering potential investors and had hired Goldman Sachs to broker that interest. And they put some feelers out, about how Schmidt's was really killing it and the opportunity there for, potential investment. And then we got the ear of P&G and Unilever specifically, who were really very interested. It was, deodorant at the time, the natural market was like very hot. One of our biggest competitors had gotten acquired within a few months of us.
Well, when was Tom's acquired?
I'm not sure the year they were acquired, but Colgate owns Tom's. But Native deodorant was one of our biggest competitors at the time.
Okay.
They had been acquired by P&G while we were negotiating this potential acquisition with Unilever and P&G. And so that happened. And so we realized, it's like kind of now or never. And like, Unilever was always my top choice from the minute we started talking to them. I felt like our values were aligned. I feel like they understood the brand. And so it definitely worked in our favor, and everything, was good. But I think, them getting acquired a few months before us was scary. What does this mean for our valuation? Right? Like what?
But wouldn't you think it gave you a better reference point?
In some ways, yeah. But we had built a bigger business in a lot of ways. We had wholesale where they were just D2C. We had this whole factory. They had, just a few employees. And so I don't think one way was right and one was wrong, but I think they were very different businesses. And I didn't want that to kind of muddy up, the potential for us to get a higher valuation.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so just for people listening, if you're ever starting a business, like it's obviously at scale, hiring a banker is the best thing you can do.
Yeah.
You're trying to do, like a lot of entrepreneurs I've seen try to sell their companies themselves. And I just think it's a recipe for disaster. I don't think you're going to maximize your returns.
I think it would be really hard because there's so much you have to do, like with the data room and like all the diligence and like.
Well, and maintain the relationship post-transaction.
Yeah.
So the bankers can be the bad guys in the room.
Exactly.
And then after the deal is over, you still have to go work with these people. So if you're pushing them too hard and they go, this guy's a dick, I'm not going to work with him, I'm not going to buy his company, you're going to lose out. But whereas the banker can foil.
It's true.
Basically be a foil against
and they do act as the middleman for some of the diligence.
Yeah.
So if they're, if the acquirer is asking for some crazy reports that are going to take like years to pull together,
exactly.
it's like, I don't want to deal with this. And so, the banker can go have that conversation.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. So when did you actually get acquired? Which
it
year?
was December of 2017.
How did it feel? Did you cry?
Amazing and weird. Yeah, I have a photo of myself crying in the bathroom.
I cried the day I
Did
saw
you?
my company.
Yeah.
First company.
It was like a combination of relief, pride.
It was pride, all those things, all positive,
but also
positive
like
emotions.
confusion and sadness, loss in a way, giving up something I'd spent.
I hadn't even gotten the money. This was the day that it was signed. It was just like
same.
it was just this huge release because our process took. I think we started in January. We signed at the end of April.
That's fast.
And then we closed in, I think it was like September.
Okay.
Or end of August, early September.
Yeah, it happens fast.
But it's it's drawn out. So it's like 6 months.
There's too much time to think about it.
Yeah. Documents and paperwork and diligence back and forth.
And always wondering like
is it going to happen? Is it not going to happen? And then the moment it's signed, you have this emotional release.
Yeah.
It's
oh
great.
My God. And I had been up all night because we were in New York. The attorneys were going at it all night. And so I was just also tired and confused. And I came out of the bathroom after taking that photo. And one of the guys from the Unilever side was annoyed and mad about something. And he threw his cell phone across the room. And I walked into that right after I was like, "Oh, the deal's done. Everything's good."
What was it?
Did you find out? There was some confusion around some terms, and they ended up working it out. Everything was fine, but I was my heart fell, and I was like, "This isn't happening." Oh, and the first thing I thought to do was pull him aside and be like, "Are you okay? Is everything okay?" And just comfort him, not really knowing what's happening. And I think it may have worked a little bit. I don't know, but wild emotions and just so much.
Can you say how much you sold for, or some range?
Yeah, so we agreed not to say publicly, but at this point it's probably sort of out in the world. But it was 9 figures plus.
Okay. Amazing.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah.
So that's fantastic. So that's a huge exit for you.
Yeah.
And so, what did you do afterwards? Take some time off? What did you?
Yeah. I went to the grocery store during the day and thought, this is how people live that aren't building businesses, right? Like little things that I never had the luxury of doing, and I loved it. I started exercising and things, but then I very quickly realized okay, I'm not done. There's a lot more inside me and things that I can offer, to this community of entrepreneurs. And once people started emailing me and congratulating me and asking me questions about their own businesses, I realized, oh my gosh, I can help so many people. Because I started, from nothing, and I didn't, have any experience. And there were a lot of people like me out there that just wanted, somebody to talk to. And so I realized that I could do more. So I started taking a lot of calls. That gets tiring and overwhelming, and unless you put
happens after
structure around it.
Everyone reaches out to you.
And I was like, yes, I'll talk to you. And so I scheduled like back-to-back calls and emails and things. But then I decided to write my book. And I thought that's a great way to capture the story. I can help a lot of people.
What's the name of the book?
It's called Supermaker, Crafting Business on Your Own Terms.
Okay, great. We'll have it in the show notes.
Yeah, thanks.
That'd be great.
But it covers the whole journey. It has
take you to write
takeaway
the book?
lessons. Probably about a year and a half.
Okay.
I had
So you did this right after you got acquired?
I took a little time off. Started the investment fund Color that you mentioned.
Did you work at?
Yeah, I stayed on at Schmidt's, not in operations, but more as a spokesperson, advocate, supporter of the brand, which worked very well for me. A few years. So now I'm more kind of on a project basis as needed, which is great. But yeah, after the acquisition, I stepped away from the day-to-day, operations, and took a deep breath.
Okay, amazing.
I knew that we were in good hands.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. Okay, so you wrote the book, you started Color Capital.
Yeah.
But before we go into all the details there, what was your biggest mistake with Schmidt's?
Oh boy. I mean, there were a lot of like day-to-day things I did wrong. Little, big things like.
Well, what's the big thing?
Yeah. I mean, for example, I bought a used labeling machine where I should have done the research and, invested maybe the extra $10,000 to get a new one. So, just like everyday struggles like that every entrepreneur is going to encounter. But the biggest one, I think, I had an interesting business partner, a relationship that was a little, I won't get too into the details, but it was tough. It was tough. Yeah. So we basically, I brought on somebody 4 years in. It was the timing was such that I was ready for some help. This person had some involvement in other businesses and, convinced me that it was, made sense to bring him on. And, we ended up with a beautiful outcome, and I, don't have necessarily regrets in that way, but it was a challenge. It was a struggle. What was the
challenge?
So this person, came in and started kind of changing the history of the business in a way, calling themselves the co-founder, taking, press interviews without my involvement and, sort of pushing me out as the founder, which became really interesting. And I didn't realize what was happening until later. And then I had to kind of stand my ground and sort of fight for my story and my legacy.
Yeah.
It became a big challenge. And I was so focused on the business, and I wanted my customers to be happy and my retailers, and that was where I was putting my energy. And so the vanity piece didn't matter to me so much, but after the business sold, I truly had to fight to maintain the integrity of my story.
Well, your name is on the door. I don't know how people get.
Yeah, it's weird. This person proclaimed themselves as the co-founder and started changing some of the facts and random things. And then I found out later just, some weird things, potentially about some other businesses he had been involved in. So I think, my point is by sparing all the details, just do your research on who you do business with, right?
Yeah. And get references. I mean, if you're going to go into business with anyone, it should be more intense than a job interview. It's check the last 3 or 4 businesses they've been in. Speak to a whole bunch of people, especially when you're giving them equity, taking investment.
And
I
did that. Yeah. And I was, sort of naive and a young entrepreneur who was so ready to have the help. And again, we ended up in a positive place. And, I'm sure there's together, we did amazing things, but there were too many challenges that I don't think anybody should have to go through, especially as a woman entrepreneur.
Yeah.
I think it just was hard.
Is it a bit condescending, you think, in a way?
Yeah. Just changing facts about how the company started and where it ended and what our rules were and things. But I think, the things I'd learned that other people could learn from is, of course, doing your diligence on who you're working with, but also putting, things in writing, the company history, everybody signing off on, the facts and your titles, and just making sure we're all on the same page around how we're talking about the business and our roles in it and things. So I'll share more on that soon. I had written, I think, a Twitter thread on that a year ago or so about just things to be thinking about when you bring on any business partner. Things to just, later on that you'll appreciate.
Yeah.
When you're desperate in the moment, you don't always think about some of these
I
things.
think when it comes to founders, a lot of us, we do it for the passion, but we want the recognition as well. And if someone tries to take away, our efforts, and
if you're manipulating the history and the facts, that's not cool, right? I'll give credit where it's due, always.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but if it's when someone's trying to change facts, it's whoa. you forget that there's, people have bad intentions sometimes, and it's kind of sad. But, as a founder too, like you care about your business more than anyone ever will.
Absolutely.
And it's, and so that makes things, tricky too. And around decision
I
making.
find people who come into these roles, typically, when I say roles, they join as a partner and they try and change some of the facts.
Yeah.
They're just personally very insecure.
Yeah, I could see that.
It's just and they feel they need validation for who they are, and so they try and take it from someone else. And
Sure,
it never works out.
Yeah, it's hard, but I've had great business partners too. My last endeavor, BFF, we were a community that we'd built, for women in Web3 education, and Britt Moore, and amazing. Like the two of us worked very well together. We knew our place. We, were just chill. There was no ego. So the good business partners exist.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're out there for sure.
That's great. Yeah, absolutely. Like, and what I find is interesting when you work with people. Whenever I see entrepreneurs working with people that they've worked with in the past, that's always a really good sign for investors.
Yeah, I think so too.
I love investing in people who've had a success before. They're getting together, the band's getting together again, and they're going to do something else.
Yeah.
That is a huge positive indicator for me.
That's cool, yeah. I do think about some people I've worked with in the past, even some employees of mine. I would love to build something with them again, right?
Well, my co-founders for my current company were formerly employees of mine in a previous company.
Oh, that's awesome.
So, but I loved working with them. They were fantastic. I'm like, well, let's start a company together, and we did.
That's cool.
So that's great.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's move on to Color Capital. What was your everyone's reaching out to you. You've just sold your company for a boatload of money. Everybody needs capital in building a business. How do you start that, and how do you put the infrastructure in place so that you're just not swamped every single day with a deluge of requests for capital?
Well, first I had an interesting challenge, I think, because I never raised capital. So starting a fund as a founder who hadn't raised herself gave me a different perspective. But I think it was valuable when I was evaluating businesses.
And how big was the fund?
So it was just my husband and I. Basically, we had committed a certain amount of the acquisition money to the fund, and so we didn't. It's an evergreen fund. We don't have a set amount each year. It was more kind of a percentage of our net worth. We didn't have any partners, just the two of us, so we, could invest in things that we wanted without, anybody getting in the way. We had a team that helped with diligence and things, a financial office, but it was nice. But also, we're not going to lead around, just the two of us. We would never be a lead investor, but we were really excited to support other consumer products. And I didn't mention that my husband, Chris Cantino, had built the business with me, and so together we had developed a breadth of knowledge and experience that we could apply to other businesses. And so, we were excited to plug in where we could, and we're excited about different trends in CPG, but it's also, a lot of the categories are very crowded. And so making sense of what's a good investment. Because I never would have invested in my business as an investor.
Yeah.
Which is wild, because that would have been a loss, or it would have been a win later. But I would have missed out by saying no to a company like Schmidt's. But I didn't think the brand was sophisticated enough. I felt like the category is very crowded. But we did something amazing. Yeah. So you never know, who's gonna win. And some of the companies that you take the big bets on end up, not being the W's, that you had hoped for. And yeah.
Well, what is it like working with Chris in the business? I mean, and what advice do you give to other couples that are trying to start a business or working a business together?
It's fun. We met at a job, so work has always been a part of us as a couple. As the founder of my business and then him supporting me, there are interesting dynamics there. I couldn't have asked for a better partner in that regard, always supporting me, giving me what I needed, but working really, really hard. And then together as investors, we don't always agree on everything, but I trust his...
Nor should you.
Right. But I lean on him for expertise in certain areas. He looks to me for expertise on others. We both bring different things to the table. If we're networking or, trying to pitch ourselves, there's, certain things that he sees me as, adding value. And so it's good. It's a balance. But I think the biggest thing is definitely ditching the ego and recognizing where your weaknesses are and but like making space for other things in your relationship because it can get weird, you know, if
Yeah.
like businesses is like
Well, the
everything.
problem is you wind up working all the time. So how do you
Yeah.
separate? Like you go out for dinner, you start talking about work,
Right.
and
Yeah.
it's hard to separate that.
It's fun though to
It
be
is.
out at dinner and to be able to talk about work sometimes, but then realizing like, okay, we have other really cool things about our lives
Yeah.
too. Like let's
Unplug
talk
a bit.
about that. Yeah.
So what was your most successful investment at Color, and what was your
Yeah.
biggest
Oh.
failure at Color?
We had an exit with a brand called Hero Cosmetics, a
Okay.
CPG company that was catered towards skincare. One that I was a little on the fence about in the beginning and just kept watching, and then we jumped in and they got acquired. That was amazing. We've had
What is the multiple in that?
I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay.
But we also had a couple fails. Like House Beverages was a big brand that so many people in the DTC space were excited about. It was a low alcohol beverage that had amazing branding, super cool founders, and I still love the founders to this day. You know, we became friends, but they ended up, you know, as a business partners going in opposite directions, which in some ways I think affected the business. They shut down, but actually it got bought by somebody else later. So that could potentially end up in a win. But there's been some companies that just, you know, kind of dissipate, go away, you know. So we'll see. We've just tweaked our investment strategy a bit. Before we were more early stage CPG. Now it's a little bit later stage. Some emerging tech, you know, has our interest. And then now we're like total fanatics of pickleball.
Yeah.
So we're making some investments in that space.
Well, let's
too.
get into that for a bit.
Yeah.
So pickleball is a craze that's taking over.
Yeah.
At least in San Diego, it's gone nuts.
It's
right?
taken over my life
Yeah.
now that I have more time.
So,
Yeah.
so talk me through what you guys are doing in that space
Yeah,
and
yeah.
why you're so passionate about
Well,
pickleball.
it's funny because I started playing pickleball just as something fun to do, but the way my brain works is like, oh, well, how to like
How do you make a
what's the
business out of
business
this?
side? Yeah, but I like want to be careful of that because I don't want it to like ruin
Yeah.
the like.
Did you buy a team?
We're in talks with 2 different teams.
Okay.
And yes, it's gonna happen, but we got to figure out the right move.
Yeah.
That would be amazing.
That'd be
I'm very
awesome.
excited to own a team because we watch all the
Yeah.
the pros. We watch the MLP league, the PPA. I'll spare you the details, but
But
there's
what are
actually
these teams? What are these teams valued at typically right now? What's the
yeah,
average?
it changes
across the board?
literally every day. It's changing because there's a lot of drama happening in
Yeah.
the pickleball space right now. There was the PPA and the MLP ended up merging, but there was a lot of stuff happening around that. Like one day it was on, the next day it was off.
I mean, just order of magnitude. Is it worth tens of millions of dollars, hundreds? Like, where are these guys?
Tens to millions, hundreds, yeah.
Okay.
But it depends on the team. It depends on who you ask. We're actually going to be investing in the parent company
Okay.
of the merger between the Major League Pickleball and the
Okay.
Professional Pickleball Association, which is cool too.
Very cool.
But we are realistic in the sense that like we might not see big returns on this. We might not see any returns, but it will
It's a passion.
give us access.
passion
Yeah,
investment.
it'll bring us closer to the space, and have some opportunities that we're excited about
Okay.
for when I go pro in a couple of years.
But you guys are pretty good. I mean, I've seen your.
We've gotten
your-
good. We
your-
play a
your
lot.
clips, yeah.
Yeah, we play probably almost every day.
Okay. And where do you rank in the country or the world? Or
Well, there's a ranking that's like tennis has rankings, right? So like I would call myself maybe like a 4.0, which means that I've mastered the basics and I've got some strategy behind my game. Chris probably a little higher than that. So we play together. Mixed doubles is really fun. We also have our groups. He has his men groups, I have my women groups, which is also really cool.
did you know anything about tennis before you started playing?
I used to play tennis in high school, so
okay.
that helped.
That helped a lot.
But I also hurt me in a little bit, or in some ways, I think because some of my strokes, I had to,
You unlearn them.
yeah, exactly, and retrain my muscle memory. Some of the court positioning, tennis can get in the way of. But I could literally go on about pickleball forever, so you probably have to stop me. But but no, it's a big part of our lives, and I think it's something that I hope a lot of more entrepreneurs can find time for. Because it's there's a community aspect of it, which is really healthy. The physical piece of it, mentally, it's like such a release. And I wrote an article for The Dink, which is a pickleball publication, about finding your next business partner on the pickleball court. And again, like when you watch people, how they treat the wait staff at dinner,
Exactly.
it's like, how are they acting on the court? Like, are they calling legit line calls? Are they do they have a good attitude? How they treat their partner? Things like that. So it's kind of like a funny article, but there's some truth to it too.
No, I believe there's human behavior.
Yeah.
It's easier to mask it in a business environment because there are sort of pre-existing norms of how you do things, so people kind of flow into that.
Right.
But when the moment you take them out of their comfort zone of what they're doing, you put them into a social environment, more often than not see people's true colors.
Yeah, totally. And it's like, it's interesting the people you'll connect with through sports because you might not share a lot in common. Somebody with a totally different background or interests or, political views or religious views or whatever.
Yeah.
But on the court, it's like we're all just having fun, playing as a team. And
That's cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's how you keep yourself fit and healthy at the moment.
Yeah.
How many hours a week do you play?
Probably like 2 to 3 hours a day,
Wow.
6 to 7 days a week.
2-3 hours a day.
It's like
That's
a full-time job right now.
That's a lot.
But I've started, I couldn't
How do you
help.
find the time for that?
I make the time, like
Yeah.
it's my priority. Like I
Yeah.
schedule everything else around it. I'm still active in, so I just sold BFF, my,
Okay.
other business.
Congratulations.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Let's talk about that for a bit.
Yeah. So 2 years ago, I'd started a company in the Web3 space, saw the opportunities there in emerging tech
Yeah.
and the potential, around crypto and NFTs. And, I know you've played in that space too.
Yeah.
I think that's how we met. And I built a beautiful community of women. We've got some pretty big names on board as some of our supporters and founding BFFs.
Mila
We got-
Kunis.
yeah,
and
Gwyneth Paltrow.
Gwyneth Paltrow, yeah.
We had there's a whole roster of people that signed on to support our efforts, and the goal there was really to help women understand the opportunities and to educate and to make sure that again we're not like left out of some of these opportunities where traditionally with tech and things we have sort of sat on the sidelines. So the goal there was just to create really tangible content. We even gave away a lot of NFTs so that people could experience what it meant to own one and have a crypto wallet and things. And over the 2 years, we built this up into something incredible, and we just sold it a few weeks ago to another community called Boss Beauties.
Congrats.
Thanks. Yeah, they're a media company that has really big plans to expand, beyond Web3. And so they're doing a lot with women and girls and sort of, elevating them and their careers. And they have a big partnership with Barbie and Mattel and
So that's
lots
great.
of other stuff in the works.
So you've had a very successful
I've been busy.
career.
Yeah,
and
thanks.
You've
Yeah.
done a lot of things. A couple of good exits.
Yeah.
What's next for Jaime?
Yeah, gosh, I'm gonna probably say right now, like I'm gonna keep playing pickleball. I'm gonna keep investing in it, and my goal, I'm putting this out there so that people can hold me accountable. 4 years from now, I'll be eligible to play in the senior pros because you have to be
Okay.
50 years old.
Okay,
So you'll see me trying out for senior pro pickleball.
that's amazing.
Keep me accountable, guys.
Yeah.
I need it. That is a huge.
I'm sure you.
It's never
gonna
gonna
crush it.
happen, but it could.
Well, if you put as much hours and
I mean, I'm working full time on
and
it.
you dedicated
Yeah,
like everything else you dedicated yourself to has been successful.
That's what I'm
so-
saying. Like I was able
think
to
you can
pull
do
off
it.
things that I had zero experience in. If you commit yourself and you really care about something, then you can do it. So
Yeah. Look, BFF was a great project.
Yeah.
And it is a great project, and I think it was very focused to diversity and inclusion. What sparked your sort of your passion for this area for making to increase that? Like, what is it? It's where you were born. Was there some life
Yeah.
experience you had that took you there?
Well, I've always wanted to be involved in like what's trending, right? And I I was never a person who could, talk about the ins and outs of crypto and totally like be like that go-to kind of like, knowledge base, but I knew that I could learn with my community and that I knew the types of things that we could learn together. And so we started thinking about the opportunities across different industries, how it applied to CPG, right? Like CPG is a huge part of me. Like how does like the Web3 and play into that? And so I started taking interest in that, and then just saw the opportunity to help more women, right? And just to like build community. And my co-founder Britt approached me about starting the business, and I thought, all right, I'm in. Let's do this. I got some time on my hands, and I want to be, involved in what's relevant.
That's great.
Yeah.
Okay, can you give me a good example of like? I mean, you've got so much experience, so you've obviously helped a ton of people along the way. Can you give me an anecdote, a story of how you really helped someone with your mentorship and guidance?
Yeah. It happens all the time. So I sold my first business in 2017. So it's been, a good 6 years, but people are still, reading my stories and reading, the press about me and things in my book and telling me like, that my story is truly an inspiration for them. So one woman reached out just through an Instagram DM. She said she's pregnant, but she's like had started, on this journey to start this business, and everybody's telling her the time's not right. It's never going to happen. You can't do both. And, my story is an example of, that you can. Yeah. And so she'll email me or message me on DM occasionally, and I'll just give her a little, encouragement, and it goes so far. And it's so amazing to hear from people that, take the leap, because of your example.
Yeah, that's great. I mean,
Yeah.
I try myself. I try to do that as well. Help as many people as you can.
Right.
It's very fulfilling.
It could be the
actually.
tiniest thing that you say or that you've done that is just like keeps them going because they don't have. Not everybody has a support network. You know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And even people will do. I have a friend
Yeah.
who called me up yesterday. We had a call, and he's been, he's just left his big corporate job at Google,
Yeah.
and he's looking for the next thing, and he wasn't sure, what type of job he should take because he was there for a long time.
Right.
And it was just, you often just need someone who kind of
Yeah.
knows you or even doesn't know you, just bounce some things off. And he was like, oh, that's great.
Yeah, that's nice.
It's an interesting dilemma in just being a person is that you always look at things in the first person view.
Yeah.
Right? You're always looking through your own two eyes.
Right.
And getting an opinion from someone else is this third party view.
Right.
And having that third person view of you and your life and just understanding what other people see helps you, see past blind spots. So you can't see what's the back of your head.
Right.
Right. So
Yeah.
having someone else tell you is,
Yeah. No, I love that.
for me, it's important. So I always look at getting opinions from people about things.
Yeah. And I think it's important too to understand that like you and I don't necessarily have all the answers.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm never going to tell somebody like, this is the way to do it or act like, I'm the expert
yeah.
now because I've had success. But I see a lot of that.
Yeah.
People out, putting out
This is the only way.
Yeah, this is how you do it. This is how but like, no, it's more like I will hear you out and I will, give you advice based on your situation, what I've been through. But like it's up to you to like,
I always think
make it
context
yours.
is critical.
Yeah.
You give people context, like, listen, this is what you're doing. This is why I think it's wrong. But
Right.
hey, make your own decision in
Yeah,
life.
exactly. Yeah.
Okay, we're going to go through some rapid fire questions. What's your top book or article or podcast recommendation?
Right now I'm reading a book called Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself by Joe Dispenza. And it's really a practice in just kind of resetting your brain. He goes through a lot of techniques around just ways that you can start thinking about things in a different way and just like breaking the sort of monotony of like the way we think about things. And so I think, I'm at this turning point in my life, in my career where like I can benefit from something like that. And I think anybody can.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah, it's really
Okay,
good.
I'll put that in the show notes as well.
Yeah,
That's great.
Yeah, please.
So what's your go-to habit for people to implement in their daily lives?
Get enough sleep. I get literally like 9 to 10 hours.
How do you do that?
I just do it. Like I don't need to be staying up past 9:30.
I get 8 hours. I mean, a good night's 8 hours.
Yeah, no, that's
Typically
good.
7.5 to 8.
There might be a day where I get 8, but
Okay.
but generally like it's a good
That's good.
solid
What time do
9.
you go to bed though?
9:30ish.
Yeah.
I used to
I
stay
go
up, but I'm
10
like
o'clock.
there's nothing I need to be up for.
Yeah.
I read my book, get cozy. And
I
I'm
prefer
out.
waking up early in the morning, actually.
Yeah,
I
me
like
too.
getting up at 5:30.
Yeah, that's good. I haven't gotten there yet. I'm like more kind of 6:30.
Yeah, I get 7 off 8 hours.
Yeah,
That works for me.
but no, like good sleep is literally
do you
everything
have
to me.
Do you have an 8 sleep?
I used to, and then it exploded. And
What?
Be careful.
Really?
Water all over the bed. The bed was a mess. Yes.
Okay, well, not like a.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Careful. Yeah, look it up. It's common. It's a common problem.
Okay.
So no 8 sleep. Just me sleeping. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thanks. I'm not going to sleep as well at night anymore. What's the best bit of financial advice you've ever received?
Oh, best bit of financial advice. Probably goes back to like my parents when I was growing up and just, try to save half of what you make. Like when I was babysitting, when I was like 13 years old, I had a little bank. I'd put half of it there, keep the other half, eventually saved up to buy my first car.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah. So just being frugal. Like that has always stuck with me. Yeah.
Congrats. That's great. What's a common misconception about business or life that you'd like to set the record straight on?
Oh, misconception. That's
And a common one.
a common one. I think that like successful entrepreneurs, like they're happy all the time and they've got it easy. Like, I think we're still humans.
Yeah.
Like, no matter what success we've experienced and what we've been through, like I think there's new challenges and it's harder in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Like, we don't have the stress of money hanging over us and that, that's fantastic. But there's, we're still dealing with shit.
Yeah, it's one of those. If you don't have money,
Yeah.
money's the only thing that you worry about.
Yeah.
And when you have money, then you worry about everything else.
Yeah.
And there's a lot more things to worry about that you don't notice. When you don't have money,
and I don't mean the like more money, more problems thing. It's more just like the mental side of being human and just like in identity and all that good stuff. Yeah.
So self-actualization is the top of Maslow's hierarchy, but there's another vector that you need to look at, and that begins at the basics. Obviously, water and oxygen, and you need that pretty much oxygen every minute,
Right.
every second.
Yeah.
Water every day or a couple of days minimum, and then food a little bit longer there. And what happens with humans is the less we have to focus on the short periods of time for our needs, the more longer term we focus we are, the more we get to self-actualization.
Oh.
And so what I mean by that is, if you don't have to worry about food for 20, 30, 40 years,
Yeah.
you think about things a lot differently because you're not in survival mode.
Yeah.
If you don't have to worry about paying rent, mortgages for a long period of time, it frees up capacity in your brain not to focus on survival, but to focus on
Oh,
self-actualization.
that's interesting. Yeah.
And so money for me is a resource that gives you a longer and longer time frame and viewpoint to self-actualize.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
without
that's-
money, you're focusing on, oxygen, water, food, shelter.
Yeah.
Those
That's
sorts
so
of
interesting.
things.
You're right. Like we're in a position now, like overthinking things or like always, struggling to stay relevant. I think
Yeah.
that's a common issue
Yeah.
with a lot of entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, I've been through this. Like what's
But that's
next
part
for
of
me now? Like,
self-actualization.
yeah, exactly.
How
Yeah.
am I relevant in
Right.
the world? How do I contribute my skills to help
Right.
society? These sorts of things. But you can't worry about that if you don't have food on the table,
Yeah.
if you don't have a place to stay.
Right.
And so it's very important that you build yourself up to a point where you actually have reasonably long runways in terms of
Yeah.
of material needs, for survival needs.
Totally. I like it. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
okay.
let's finish off by telling people where they can find you
Yeah.
on social media,
Yeah.
and we'll link the links below as well.
Cool. I'm probably most active on Instagram right now. It's on Jaime Schmidt, Jaime Schmidt. Doing a little Twitter stuff and some LinkedIn, and but I'm always available. I love to get a DM from somebody who's heard me on a podcast.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, make sure the audience sends you messages
Thank
and
you.
comment below as well.
Yeah, please.
And I'm sure Jamie will be more than happy to respond to hopefully a lot of you.
Yeah, for sure.
Thanks, Jamie.
Yeah,
Great having
thank
you
you.
here.
Enjoyed it.
Awesome.